to Season 2 of Pasco Podcast, a series where we discuss leadership in public service. We'd like to thank our sponsors, the 550,000 plus residents of Pasco County, as represented by the Board of County Commissioners. It's through their trust and empowerment of our workforce and leadership team that we're able to bring you this podcast. We created this podcast to help public servants build leadership skills and leverage them for success by sharing the experiences of our peers.
Hi, I'm Dan Biles, and welcome to our 23rd episode of Pasco Podcast. This episode is going to be a little different than what you're used to, because we all know change is inevitable. And this is the last time I'll be hosting this podcast. For those of you who haven't heard the news, I've decided to step down as Pasco County Administrator, and the board has chosen today's guest, Mike Carballa, to succeed me. Congratulations, Mike, and thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate you having me. And more importantly, congratulations to you as you embark on this next chapter of your life.
Thanks. We're excited about that. Now, just a little insight into my decision. Leadership is part of who I am and what I do. And my wife and I have been given an opportunity to provide leadership training and development in local churches overseas. Now, it's not easy to think about leaving this incredible team here in Pasco County. And it's been an honor serving this community. And over the time here, I've grown to love, not just the work, but the people that surround us in doing the work we do. So, it's really been an honor and a privilege to be here.
Well, Dan, I can tell you it's been an honor and a privilege for me personally to work with you. And I know a lot can be same across the organization. 5 years, absolutely amazing tenure. What will you remember most about your time here at Pasco?
Not COVID. How about that? Now, there's a list of a pretty tremendous amount of things that the team has accomplished over the last 5 years, from dealing with a pandemic to natural disasters. The weekend I started, Starkey Wilderness Park was burning, right? And
I do remember that.
And so there's been a lot of things done by the team here over the past 5 years. Ridge Road, Office Campus Center is coming. But I think ultimately the most thing that I'm probably most proud about is really how we changed the culture of the organization to focus on the people that are here, that are doing the work, so that then they can focus on doing the work that our citizens and our customers demand. And, that's resulted in 3 national, Best Place to Work awards, great team doing a lot of great work, and really recognition throughout the county of what we've done. So I think ultimately that's been probably what I'm most proud of, the 5 years and the time that we've been here, a little over 5 years. So
Fantastic.
So, and you've been here through all this, right?
Have.
You were, I think, utilities engineering director when I started five plus years ago. Then, got promoted up to assistant county administrator. So from your seat, what's the culture change look like over the last 5 years?
It's a good question. I think the biggest thing that has impressed me the most about the cultural change is really the level of trust. And not to say that trust didn't exist, but I feel like we've always had pockets of it, and you took it to a new level. You really did, and created a safe environment for folks, even myself as a new ACA at the time, to make mistakes, to learn, and to really encourage what I'll call intelligent risk taking. And that has a trickle down effect throughout the entire organization. And we saw it. I got to witness it firsthand as those of us in the leadership team for utilities led things, and then getting into the ACA role, looking at the change and transformation of say our public works department as just an example. So and I know those changes were occurring as well in the other branches and throughout the organization. So really the level of trust that was imparted upon those of us in the organization, and watching it just flow down was simply amazing. And quite honestly, it's kept me here. It's kept me engaged in this county. So thanks for bringing that. As you embarked on this cultural right. Change here, what would you say your biggest challenges were in turning the tide?
Okay, so I'm going to repeat what you just said a lot. I really am, because when I got here, this was a low trust organization, right? The administration didn't trust the rest of the organization, and the rest of the organization didn't trust the leadership. You can see that through the fact that, Michelle's calendar was packed. Everybody came to her for decisions, right? And vice versa, in our employee surveys, we would have employees fill out the survey as if they were in another department so that their supervisor couldn't come back to them with the comments they made. So they didn't trust the system either, right? And so, I remember getting here and, day one, without Michelle, after the 2-week transition, we kind of got together as a leadership team, right? And I said, ultimately, trust is something I have to give you before you'll ever be willing to trust me. Mm-hmm. And so we started shedding decisions, right? We started delegating down, trying to push those decisions down to the lowest level, because delegating is built on trust, right?
It is. And if I can interrupt you, and
sure.
I do a little bit, how did that feel? I mean, being in the top seat, to give away all that trust and all that power, and to know that you're on the line ultimately, right, for all that. Advice for those of us that are still struggling with trust, maybe? I mean, how do you?
So we've talked some over the last 5 years about courage, right? Aristotle says that's the base value. Yes. That's the value that every other value is built on. Our core values are integrity, respect, service excellence, innovation, and yet you can't have integrity without courage to stand up for what's right. Mm-hmm. Right. And so in order to trust others to do their job, you have to have courage to give that away.
Absolutely.
Right. And so that, I think, ultimately, at the end of the day, the ability to trust the organization, that we hire experts, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know how to run a fire department. I don't know how to run purchasing. I don't know how to run fleet. I mean, I could go on, right? We've talked about that, right? There are 27 different departments. I'm qualified to run 6. Right. So you got to trust your experts and hire them and let them do their job, right? And so that's what I think that was the biggest challenge, because the organization that was new, right? Mm-hmm. The organization reacted to that, and they weren't really sure how to handle that. And so we went through some periods of adjustment. And I remember getting up from a meeting and said, I don't ever want to come back to this meeting. Y'all can have it, but I'm not going to show up. Or kicking somebody out of my office and tell them that's not my decision. That's in your roles and responsibilities. That's your decision to make that. That's your decision to make. So I think ultimately that really was the thing, and you couldn't stop, right? You couldn't stop, because the second you picked up on something or dove in or did something where it indicated you didn't trust somebody, you've damaged the work you've done.
Correct.
So let's talk a little bit about how you see this progressing when you take over. Mm-hmm. Why is the organization's culture important to you?
So I would say, me personally, it's important because culture is that engine that ultimately drives performance, right? I mean, there's really a lot of wisdom in those 3 simple words that you've expanded upon since you got here.
I stole from somebody.
But that's okay. Yeah. I think every thought has probably been thought at some point here in the world. People, purpose, and performance, right? Taking care of the people, giving them the sense of a purpose, and then of course, that will drive performance. It takes care of itself. I see that progressing, especially the people piece, because, if I keep up with the analogy of an engine, right, being that engine that drives, an engine, when it's running, it's self-sustaining as long as it's got fuel and maintenance. So you have to continue to give it fuel and maintenance, right? And so we've got to continue to take care and focus on our people. And so when I look at sustaining the culture and I look at progressing, it's still a focus on people. And that's everything from safety, which has been a very big. I've been a very big proponent of it here in public infrastructure, and we've got a great team that helps us with safety. But the safety of our folks, making sure we've got resources, making sure our folks are continue to be empowered, and trusted to do their jobs, and with minimal involvement. Our job as leaders is to break down the barriers and get out of the way. We'll continue that, as well as training. It was, I'm reminded of Richard Branson when he talks about, clients and employees, right? And it's, and I'm paraphrasing here, of course, but clients don't come first. Employees come first. Right. Because without employees, who's going to take care of the clients? Right. And so that's where I see this. That's how I see this going, especially as this county continues to just, grow rapidly. And so as we do that, I mean, you've got an engineering background, and I think it's been incredibly helpful as we manage smart growth. How did that serve you as a county administrator? Because you're kind of a rare bird when it comes to engineers being county administrators. How did that help you?
Well, I think for a lot of reasons. One, I understood really what the risks that was being taken on the property owner and the developer side, right? Because there's a risk proposition to this. And with anything in our economy, there's a risk reward proposition. And the bigger the risk, the greater the reward. And so you got to understand that their perspective is how they approach that, but also understand we need to build consistency into our processes, because one of the most disruptive things to the development process is unpredictability, right? They want predictability. And if you tell them it's going to take 6 months to do something, well, they may not like 6 months, but if you're consistently reasonably accurate on your projections, then you're predictable.
Right.
At least you're predictable,
that, right?
And so they can plan about that. But I think is part of that understanding from an engineer perspective, and having actually sat on that side, how pieces fit together, big picture, right? We talk about 2D versus 3D, and the difference in how you design bases. It plays a role. And there are people that go through school and they can't think in 3D, right? And there are those that go through school and can think in 3D. And so it's a different animal as how these pieces are going to fit and how the big picture works together, right? And how that integrates with not just a comp plan, but what people want out there. And sometimes what they want is not what they're saying. And you have to understand that as well, right? And so there's a whole network that goes into that, and at the same time understanding what impact that is going downstream. We're in an environment in a county where, interestingly enough, the most valuable property is not on the water. It's actually you move away from the water because the water was developed in the 50s, 60s, and 70s and 80s and is not necessarily the best product today. And so now some of that's changing. Over time, we're having some redevelopment in there, but it's got its own issues out there on the coast with the hazards that are involved there. And so we're kind of a little different animal with respect to, you go down to Pinellas or any other coastal community and the most valuable properties are on the water. We're not that way. And so you just got to kind of have to understand that. And I think ultimately, as an engineer, you have to trust people doing the work for you. Right? Even though you're putting your stamp on it.
Correct.
And you're the one on the line from a liability perspective. So it just gets kind of back to trust. And having practiced that with my CAD techs and everything over a period of time, it makes it easier on the trust side as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So that helps. Now, you're also an engineer.
I am.
So they've gone 2 for 2. So do you anticipate any specific challenges in leading the organization as you transition from being focused on public infrastructure and really an enterprise based, right? They're all separate business units. They pay for service, fee for service, right? But you're transitioning from that now to the county administrator, which now you're not just doing enterprise, but you're also working on those that don't come with their own revenue, right? Whether it's in public services or internal services or whatnot. How do you see that working out?
Yeah, so I'll admit, I'm very comfortable in the public infrastructure realm, and there's a lot that I don't know about things. Use public services is probably the best example of a group that I don't know a whole lot about. And I want to learn about it, of course, and I understand obviously the having a broader perspective of funding and funding sources has been one of those things to really grapple on. I feel that stepping out of the infrastructure role and into the administrator role now, not only looking at the challenges the organization will face, but look at the external challenges, right, that are going to face the county. Growth is still going to be a huge challenge for all of us, not just the infrastructure branch and development services, but internal services, fire rescue, public services are all going to have increased demands placed on their services as a result. And so we've got to not only take care of that strain as we try to build new infrastructure, and I'm using infrastructure now in a very broad term, not water, sewer, roads, but that could be fire. That could be, animal services. Do we have the capacity to deal with these things? We're bringing a jail on board. We just learned about jail expansions and requirements there. We've got to invest in the older infrastructure too, and make sure that what we've already built isn't falling apart. So those are going to be very, very specific challenges that we're going to face, and we're doing that in the face of some potential economic headwinds. Right? We're looking now at some crazy inflation that we haven't seen in this country in a long, long time. I think we've got a little bit of a little microcosm here in Florida and in the Bay Area that I think is going to help us weather things, but we've put together a good budget and a plan, and thank you to you and our budget folks, and we've really worked as a team to kind of project out how we can maybe tack and deal with those things in the future. And then I think probably again, coming back to people. Right. Biggest challenges is, how are we going to continue to attract, retain, and develop a quality workforce? We've got such a great team already, but it is hard out there, just even adding people and then more or less even retaining them. So again, we continue to invest in our people, and so kind of looking at all those challenges. Those are really the big key ones here, at least that I'm focused on today. I'm curious, just from my every time we take on something new,
right.
It's an opportunity for us to grow,
right.
Even being in the top job,
right.
Dan, even being in the top job, we always talk about what have you learned. So I'm kind of curious. Can you give us any insight on the personal growth that you've experienced? Could be just even moving to Florida, or even being county administrator. How have you grown personally in the last 5 years with those two things?
Well, I think, a lot of different ways. I think, we, kind of gets back to the old adage that if you're not growing, you're dead,
mm-hmm.
right? Or dying.
Right.
And none of us want that, nope. Right? So
not anytime soon.
Not anytime soon. And so I think there are a lot of different ways. One, I read Adam Grant's originals after I got down here, and his discussion about strategic procrastination. That's the word he uses. I use proactive procrastination just to keep the peace. But the ability to marinate on an idea and put it in your subconscious and just let it sit there and work its way out. It's been surprising how many off the wall ideas come out of that. Some of the research that his team has done on that is that groups that are putting together proposals are 28 to 30% more creative when they operate in that manner, as opposed to just trying to do the work, right? And
I wrote my best term papers the night before.
Oh, well, yeah. Well,
marinated on some
ideas.
The
other example he uses is if you look in the written speech that Martin Luther King gave, his "I Have a Dream" speech, the words "I have a dream" aren't in the speech. He added those while he was sitting there waiting to speak. And so that was part of his process, was to continually update. And so, he added the most famous words in the speech weren't in his original speech.
It's fantastic.
And so the fact that sometimes, we got to do things now, but every once in a while it's helpful to step back, just let it marinate, right? Like a good steak. And as a cook, right?
I do.
Let it marinate. And in order for us to do that as leaders, we have to create white space in our calendar. And so to shed the meetings I talked about earlier, to shed some of those decisions down to the right level, creates that white space on the calendar. It allows you to kind of take your time and marinate on those and come up with some of those ideas that are just outside the box, if you will, or not even near the box. I mean, we've done some things that are pretty remarkable and unique to local government because of the way we've done that, right?
Right. We
and
have.
So, I think that's part of it. And just, I'm probably a little more patient today than I was 5 years ago with the work and the process and the way things have to happen. The fact that, as a consultant, you can do things that you can't necessarily do in local government because we have rules and restrictions and
mm-hmm.
things that we have to follow that we just can't skip. Right. There are steps that we have to follow. And so just kind of being patient with that and understanding that, and then trying to educate others how that works. And ultimately it gets back to the whole trust factor, right? In doing that and letting people do their job. So I think that's some of it.
Yeah.
I don't know if my kids or my wife would tell you I'm more patient today than I was 5 years ago, but that's a different subject for a different time.
Absolutely.
It's a different podcast.
We'll bring you back for that one.
So, as we think about that, change can be difficult at times, but yet our core value is innovation, and innovation by definition requires change. Right. That's a change in what we're doing to improve something, to leap out ahead of something else, whether it's in the market or whatever. And so, but it's difficult. It's not easy, right? It's breaking paradigms. It's breaking processes. It's doing those things. So as part of that, any ideas or things you'd like to share that might ease concerns, right? Because when somebody's been doing something for 5 years, people are comfortable with it. And then you change it. Now people are going to be uncomfortable. So ease concerns or questions people may have about this change in leadership.
Yeah, and I think it's natural, right? Anytime someone new takes over, whether it's the head of an organization or even your supervisor, it can be nerve-wracking. I look at how this evolved, and believe me, the past, I can't remember how long it's been since you made your announcement. It feels like it feels like 2 years to some of us. But as we've kind of gone through this evolution, and up until the previous board meeting, I was actually happy that the board had made the decision that they made, just in terms of selecting and making it permanent. Whether it was me, someone else, doesn't matter. The fact that action was taken, quite honestly, saved a lot of organizational stress. Whether it's 6 to 8 months of a search, and then if an external candidate was brought in, probably at least another 6 months of trying to feel that person out to try to learn. So I feel like the board was, exercised its wisdom to really pull something like that together to save the organization stress. So that's a good thing. And likewise in my meetings with board members, culture is still very important to them.
Right.
And kudos to you for getting them to see that. You and I talked about your interview when you first came in. Culture was not something. And quite honestly, I think back over my interview experience, no one really talks about culture, especially in leadership jobs, even though, quite honestly, as you point out aptly, it's probably your top job. It is your top job, is to foster that culture. So we're going to continue to build on that. That doesn't change. And I think that's the nice thing, is that those of us as internal candidates are a product of that culture. And so being a product of that culture puts us in a unique position to continue to nurture that culture, right? That fuel and maintenance that we talked about earlier. And I think you've always said that good culture will spit out and reject anything that doesn't quite fit in it. And, so again, as we sustain and we build upon that culture, Dan, it's, I think that's where people can really rest assured that things are going to continue the way that they've continued. Like you've said, if the leader can walk away and no one knows who's really, we're doing our job right. And so that's kind of the way I look at it too. So, you have managed to lead this organization through a lot in a short amount of time. And I'm a guy, I got lists, I got goals, I got all these things. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to get A, B, C, D, and E done. And boy, sometimes I only get down to like B. Is there anything you wish you'd been able to get done before the buzzer?
Boy, that's probably I sit back and think about, there's probably a long list of things that still are out there that need to get done. Part of it is, we have people in this organization that have a lot of great ideas and are doing a lot of great work. And so part of my job and our job as leaders is to facilitate that. We don't necessarily come up with all the great ideas. We don't come up with the things we need to do, but it's to facilitate that so that they can do that better. And while we are getting better at that, there's still work to do. We still have processes and things in place that we need to continue to work on and continue to build on. I think is over the last, as we look back on the last 5 years, we've spent a lot of time really focusing on people, and we should. They are by far, if you list those three words in priority order, and they are in priority order, there's a really big gap between 1 and 2. And then there's a big gap between 2 and 3. Not necessarily as big. So we focus on the people, and then we focus on connecting them. Because tell you what, I was not here when the board and the leadership did the whole value and strategic planning initially, and then came up with a mission statement and a vision statement. But the vision of being Florida's premier county is an aspirational vision.
Correct.
In reality, it's something that is never achievable in general, because how can you as a county with 57 different lines of business hit premier in every single one all on the same day.
Right.
It's an aspirational goal, something we should always aspire to. We can always see those great ideas out there, but it's like perfection. Right?
Yes.
You shoot for perfection, you get excellence.
Right.
You don't get perfection, you get excellence. Right. But that doesn't mean you don't shoot for it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so our mission statement, our purpose, we serve our community, create a better future, 8 words. And as I speak about our culture, I tell the audience that if you're in local government, that's your mission statement. It doesn't matter if you're in Pasco or if you're in Broward County or you're in Atlanta, Georgia. That's what we do as local government.
It's actually a fantastic mission statement.
It is.
And if you look, I've seen mission statements before, and they drone on and on and on, where they tried to, put as much and pack as much into it as they can. And like you say, eight words. 8 words. It's described the purpose of local government.
It's exactly
fantastic.
What we do. We serve our community, create a better future. And so, a lot in the lines of, Apple's or some of the great mission statements are out there, right? The Steve Jobs, Apple's mission statement,
right.
Serve mankind through technology. Doesn't talk about computers at all. Right. Just serve humankind. And so, I think as we looked at that, we focused on those first 1 and 2, and then we got great performance, but we still have to work on that. Right. Mm-hmm. And the key there is not work on getting great performance, because we get it, but it's how do we know we're doing the right thing all the time? Mm-hmm. How do we know we're delivering the product to the customer that the customer wants? Right. Not what we want to give them, but what the customer is looking for. So we still have work to do there. And I think if anything, the integration of the best management practices and the things that are out there in the industry on the private side, on the public side, right, whether it's Baldrige or Sterling, Lean Six Sigma, you can go down the list of all the different, initiatives, right? The integration of those into the way we just think and the way we do business. I think we still have work to do. Right. And so, but that, to be honest, when you leave and when your replacement leaves, we're still going to have work to do there. Always. But it's going to be a matter of like that aspirational, continue to improve, continue to build, continue to improve, continue to integrate throughout time. So I think that's, part of that. I think that's probably, that's not something you do at the buzzer. That's not the 3-point shot at the buzzer to win the game. Right. So, I will say on that, for something specific, we met yesterday on the jail expansion, and that's been one that we've really struggled with just because of the way the market's turned on us. Yeah. Right. It's not been, it's not a sheriff detention officer issue. It's not a facilities issue. It's not an architect issue. It's not a, Moss construction issue. It's been the market has turned so dramatically over the last 3 or 4 years that it's really, crimped what we wanted to do in our timelines as well. And so I think if you want to put a project on the list, that's probably a project to kind of put on the list. Okay. So, you started here 2014, a little over 8 years ago. I did. A little over 8 years ago. You, Eric, and Kathy, all the same time, right? About the same year. And you've, gone up through the ranks. What does that mean to you? So you started as a director out in utilities. Yeah. And you've gone to this as a county administrator, and now county administrator. So what does that mean to you? And then also, how is that an example that we can use to help build and inspire our younger generation? So a couple of things. Let me make a couple of points on that. First, I'm a local guy. Right. Grew up in Lutz. Right. Born and raised here, so it's kind of cool in a sense. Mm-hmm. We actually moved to Pasco after I separated from the Air Force. Okay. So it's whole life here, 5-year block. We're out in the world, and then came back to be with family. But coming back to Pasco, which is where we ended up settling in 2002 when we got back, working for your local government, it's kind of like playing sports for your hometown ball team sometimes, right? I mean, it's really cool. So, it means a lot just to work in Pasco, quite honestly, for me. Yes, I have had the good fortune of being promoted twice, but I will tell you, I didn't get promoted once. Right. I was not promoted to assistant county administrator the first time I went for it, and I was pretty salty about it, but I wasn't ready for it either. And you talk about getting promoted within your organization does show commitment from the organization to you.
But we also have to remember that we were all external candidates at one point in time. Right. So, so the organization has to sustain itself by promoting from within, which is a good thing. And then we also have to deepen the bench by bringing in those again from the outside. So I think, again, I think the point here is that it means a lot to me that it shows commitment to the organization, right? I think that we have tried to do a very good job. And as we grow, I think that there will be more opportunity for folks in the organization as we grow. As used to be the joke in government was I had to wait for my boss to die before you could go take a job, right? I don't think that's the case anymore. But we continue to expand and we continue to find leadership opportunities, and you can lead at any level in this organization. Right. And whether or not you want to lead, that's okay too, right? There's plenty of work that we can do. But I think. I think the lesson is continue as you continue to try to grow and develop in your career. Be introspective, especially if you don't get a job the first time around or even the second time sometimes, and look to how you want to grow and how your career wants to grow. But Pasco's just been a fantastic place to work. I really love it here, and I know a lot of folks do love it here, and I'm excited about a lot of the future that we have. And as you're kind of riding off here. I guess the sunrise, technically. You're going west here. Yeah, you're going east. Going east. Thinking about over your 5 years here as a leader, are there any leadership lessons that you'd like to share with us that might be of value?
Well, that's probably we've talked about a lot of over the last 30 plus minutes in this, and I think that when I stepped out. I think it was the 15th of May in 2017 and said, I'm going to trust you to do your job. Mm-hmm. We have reaped more benefit out of that than I think even I imagined, right? Just across the enterprise. And some people, it took a while to really get that. But I think the fact that, one, I said it, and then I tried as best I could to live up to it.
Right.
Probably not perfect, but I think, and then try to not just get that down through the organization, but on the flip side, teach the 5 people I work for that's part of what we have to do in order to have a great organization. Right. And I've had some tough conversations with them from time to time on specific issues or on leadership stuff. Right. Don't criticize individuals of the team in public. We don't run the bus over people, right? Even if we know whose mistake it was, we don't do that in public. We have those discussions behind closed doors, right? But you praise in public, you give credit in public, and so have some of those discussions. I was, I will say I was surprised. Because I'd had conversations with the board members during the last couple months about this succession planning and the selection process. But to hear, Commissioner Oakley come out and say, hey, this is what we do in private business. We hire great people. And then when, the leader steps away, we promote because they already know the business. They know the culture. They know what we're doing. Right. And then, Morris sitting next to him, walk through the process of Fortune 500 goes through most of the time, right? That the shareholders appoint a board. The CEO leaves, the board looks and say, okay, who's out there? And generally they've been grooming several people. I know GE has a process where they make sure the board has at least 2 candidates viable for the CEO role. And they make an internal selection. Because when you look at stats and data, internal candidates are significantly more successful on the private side than external candidates as CEOs. And so why would you not do that in our business, right? I mean, we are 3,000 people, probably going to be close to 3,600 soon with the ads and fire rescue and other places and adding the detention center, to our portfolio, to use a private term.
Yes.
Right. $1.8 billion enterprise.
Correct.
Why do we not model what the private sector is doing with respect to governance, right? And so they walk through that process. And I think that shows that not only did the team learn. And not only did we teach each other, but they learned too about how a good organization should run. And not just a good organization, but a premier organization.
Right.
Because that's what we want to be. Right. And so I think that, we've been speaking about for 30 minutes, trust, right? And trust takes courage, right? And that also takes humility, which we haven't talked about a whole lot, but that's integral to that process, right? Because when you trust, your role is not to come in and tell somebody how to do things.
That's correct.
At that point, it's you're trusting them to do their job. And so that takes some humility on your part, especially in the areas you know well, right?
Yes,
right?
it does.
Branford does not need me to tell him how to run public works. He does a great job. In fact, they've done amazing work in stormwater without us, the engineers, getting involved because they understand how to do their business better than we do.
Right.
Right. And so they've built that and built that. And so I think we've seen some great stuff done just because we've trusted, right? And let people do their job and hire experts and let them run it that way. So I talked a little bit about the board decision, right?
Right.
And I think by that meeting, I don't think any of us were really surprised because of the discussions we'd had, through the process and through the month leading up to the meeting. But what is the board's confidence in you, in your ability to be the next county administrator? What does that tell you, and how are you going to take that on into leading the organization?
So I think, to be succinct about it and drawing back on a couple of things that you said, number one, it's quite humbling, the level of trust that they have to be able to, make a decision like that. Quite honestly, within a short period of time. I'm ecstatic, like I said before, that they are so supportive of the culture that has been built here and that we continue to sustain. I think from a team perspective, I think I said it at the board meeting. I mean, obviously we're ready for this as a team. And again, we continue to operate as a team. From the day you announced, I can tell you the assistant county administrators were one lockstep block understanding, and we were initially very concerned about how do we after we were done going through the 5 stages of grief.
I'll say it was interesting watching y'all go through that.
Some of us went through them in different paces.
Yes,
but
I will vouch for that.
We got through that, and again, like I said at the board, I'm very excited obviously at the opportunity, humbled by the decision, but probably more excited to continue. And I say continue because I've been working alongside of these folks for 8 years, continued to work alongside these great women and men that work for us here at Pasco County in this role as county administrator, and also to continue that mission that we talked about, serving our community to create a better future, right? Working with our team members, working with our elected officials, and our community, most importantly, that community that we serve. So
Right. So as we kind of, wrap up this, I'm going to miss Pasco County and the people that are here. But really, I know the organization, I'm leaving it in good hands. We got a great team in, not just at the senior executive level, but down to the frontline supervisors. They do great work.
Yes, they do.
And they do great work. And, I'm really just humbled, and, there's no crying in baseball. So I'm going to try not to do that while we're on TV or on the mic today, and maybe later at a different meeting. But we have a change in the guard. Every organization goes through it, right? In the military, I was a commander 3 times. So I got to get the flag, the guidon as part of the command, and then I got to turn it over at the end. And we don't have a flag today, and we don't have a guidon to give. And really that's, the military does that, and they gather the whole unit in the field or in an auditorium, and they do that to show that there's a change in the guard, but that your loyalty is not so much to the individual that's leading the organization, but your loyalty is to the organization. The guidon, right? Who you're standing for and who you're going to work for. And so while we're not going to switch a flag today and do 2 quick speeches, and we're not going to really do that as part of what we do, this is kind of symbolic of that. And so what I want you to do, Mike, I want you to officially take over as host of the Pasco Podcast. We're going to switch seats. You're not going to switch a flag or do any of that, but come over here and you sit here, and I'll come over there. I'll make sure I'll take my coffee or my water so you don't drink after me.
I'll do the same.
And let's switch around.
All right. Well, that was easy.
Was that easy? This is a different view.
It is. Well, Dan, I just want to say thank you. I am really looking forward to this, but before we go, do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share
on
with
video,
the audience?
On tape? Yeah,
on tape. Yeah.
So yes, and I'll share more personally, individually over the next couple weeks. And as I said a second ago, I remember the Tom Hanks, there's no crying in baseball, right? But you can't lead an organization and do some of the things that we've done without really developing, not just I like the people I work with, but just a love for the people you work with, right? Both in the office and my staff that sits up in the suite with me, to the executive team, to the directors, and really just everybody in the organization. They just do such great work. And it's just, you sit back and you're, at times I just sit back and in awe of the work the team does. Right. I mean, I don't know if there's a better word for that. We saw the pictures this week from the James Webb Telescope, right, of the new pictures that came out of NASA from some of the amazing, the awe-inspiring depth and breadth of the universe. Right. And I won't say it's like that, but it's the work that we do and the great work the team does. When I hear about an individual or doing, I'm just sit in awe of the work that they've done and what we've done over the last 5 years and what we've accomplished, really not because of what I did. Because as I tell people, I do very little, right? I don't drive a rescue. I don't mow a park or stripe a line. I don't drive a bus. I don't do any of that. But the team did all those things, right? And so just, I guess one final thought is, I love the work we do. I love the people we work with. And that's a word that in English can mean a lot of different things, right?
Yes.
But those that know me know I don't throw that word around very often. But I just, between that and the gratitude for all the great things, the fact that when I trusted, people actually reciprocated and trusted me back. So it's gratitude for that.
That's fantastic, Dan. Well, thank you. And really on behalf of the entire organization, I think best of luck to you and Mandy as you embark on your new adventure in Eastern Europe. And a special thanks to our media relations team who makes this effort possible. And thank you for joining us. This episode of Pasco County Podcast. I'm Mike Carballa, and we'll see you next time.
For more information on Pasco County Government, please visit mypasco.net and check us out on Facebook and Twitter.